Canadian unemployment just recorded its sharpest deterioration outside of formal recession in over a year, and that shift matters far more for Vancouver housing than any single headline about prices. According to Statistics Canada's Labour Force Survey released in early January, Canada's unemployment rate rose to 6.8% in December, up from 6.5% the month before. That 0.3 percentage point increase may sound modest on the surface, but it represents roughly 64,000 additional people actively looking for work in a single month. StatsCan also made an important clarification in the release, and that increase in unemployment was not driven by people leaving the labor force. It was driven by job losses combined with continued population growth. That distinction matters because when unemployment rises while population continues to expand, it tells us the economy is no longer creating jobs fast enough to absorb new entrants. This is a sign of slowing momentum, and it does not mean the economy has stopped, but it does mean the margin for error is shrinking. Stats Canada also reported that employment declines were concentrated in goods produces industries alongside a slowdown in hiring across multiple service categories. This is important because goods producing jobs tend to be higher income and more stable, while service sector slowdowns often show up later in discretionary spending and housing behavior. The labor market is not collapsing, but is clearly losing momentum, and momentum is what sustains confidence. The stress becomes more visible when you look at youth employment. In December, the unemployment rate for Canadians aged 15 to 24 rose 13.3%, and StatsCan reported that youth employment declined by approximately 27,000 positions in just 1 month. Youth unemployment tends to act as an early cycle indicator. Younger workers are often the first to lose hours, contracts, or even entry-level roles when employers become cautious. This matters because youth employment is closely tied to household formation. Younger workers are renters. They are first-time home buyers. They are the group that fill entry-level rental units and starter homes. When youth employment weakens, household formation slows. And when household formation slows, demand for housing does not disappear, but it pauses. Now zoom out slightly because unemployment rates alone do not tell the full story. Job quality matters just as much as job quantity. In the months leading up to December, Canada did report periods of job growth, but when you break down those gains, the composition is important. In November, Canada added roughly 54,000 net jobs. However, Statistics Canada's breakdown shows that more than 60,000 of those gains came from part-time employment, while full-time employment actually declined. This tells us that while headline employment numbers appeared positive, the underlying quality of job growth was weaker. Part-time and temp jobs do not provide the same income certainty as full-time work. They are more vulnerable to cutbacks, schedule reductions, and seasonal adjustments. From a housing perspective, this matters enormously. A household supported by stable full-time income is far more likely to commit to rent increases, mortgage renewals, or home purchases than a household relying on part-time or contract work. So even when employment rises briefly, if job quality deteriorates, confidence does not recover. This is why unemployment does not need to spike dramatically to affect housing. It only needs to rise enough or weaken in quality enough to change behavior. Housing demand is not driven by optimism alone. It is driven by confidence in future income. When unemployment rises, even modestly, households reassess risk. They delay major financial commitments. They reduce discretionary spending. They wait. And that behavior typically shifts and shows up before any official recession is declared. Now layer in interest rates because unemployment and borrowing costs reinforce each other. The Bank of Canada held its rate policy at 2.25% at its December announcement, maintaining a restrictive stance relative to the decade prior to 2020. While rates are lower than their peak, they remain materially higher than what households normalized during the ultra-low rate era. The bank has also signaled caution, emphasizing that it wants to see sustained progress before materially easing financial conditions. The practical implication is straightforward. Borrowing remains expensive relative to income, and when unemployment rises at the same time, borrowing costs remain elevated, housing affordability is pressured from both sides, and income confidence weakens while mortgage payments remain high. Even if nominal pricing soften, monthly carrying costs can remain prohibitive. This is where the connection to housing truly begins, not with prices, but with cash flow. If people lose their jobs, the first pressure point is not home ownership, it is rent. Rent is a monthly obligation that does not pause. When unemployment rises, some renters fall behind, some miss payments, some consolidate households, and some move back with family. while others downsize. And for landlords, this matters because rental income services debt. If vacancies increase or tenants default, cash flow tightens, and that tightening is not evenly distributed. It affects leveraged landlords first, particularly those who purchased or refinanced when rates were low and assumptions were built around uninterrupted income. When rental income weakens, at the same time, mortgage renewals arrive at higher rates, options narrow. And some landlords inject savings, some draw on lines of credit, and some sell voluntarily to reduce exposure. None of these outcomes require panic. They are mechanical outcomes of income disruption. Unemployment also affects homeowners directly, even those who never became sellers. A homeowner who loses employment does not immediately list their property. They reduce spending, they draw down savings, they try to bridge the gap. But mortgage renewals are fixed points in time. If a renewal arrives while income is impaired, borrowing terms worsen, or refinancing becomes impossible. That is how unemployment quietly increases supply, not through headlines, but through constraint. Now consider buyers. Every unemployed person is removed from the buyer pool, but more importantly, many employed people remove themselves voluntarily. When unemployment rises, buyers become cautious and they delay purchases. They lower acceptable payment thresholds, they require greater certainty, and this effect is magnified in Vancouver because Vancouver is a credit-sensitive market. Prices are high relative to income, which means buyers rely heavily on stable employment and predictable financing. When either weakens, the marginal buyer disappears first. The marginal buyer is the one willing to stretch. Unemployment also interacts with the interest rate in a compounding way. Higher rates reduce borrowing capacity. Rising unemployment reduces willingness to borrow. Together, they shrink the buyer pool faster than either factor alone. This combination creates three mechanical outcomes. First, fewer buyers competing for the same properties. That reduces urgency and bidding pressure. Second, more sellers who need flexibility. Not all sellers are distressed, but more become price sensitive when timelines matter. Third, longer decision cycles. Transactions take longer. Buyers negotiate harder. Sellers adjust expectations. None of this requires fear. It requires understanding incentives. For buyers, rising employment shifts power. It does not mean rush. It means patience, and it means prioritizing job stability, maintaining liquidity, and focusing on payment comfort rather than maximum leverage. In an environment where unemployment is rising, the biggest risk is not missing out. The biggest risk is committing to obligations that assume uninterrupted income growth. For sellers, unemployment changes the mindset of the person on the other side of the table. Buyers are not irrational, they are cautious. Sellers who acknowledge that reality through pricing, preparation, and flexibility transact more smoothly than those who anchor to yesterday's confidence. For investors and landlords, unemployment is a reminder that housing is not just an asset, it is a business with income risk. Stress testing rental properties for vacancy, arrears, and higher financing costs is not pessimism, it is discipline. The key point is that unemployment does not need to surge to crisis levels to affect housing. It only needs to rise enough or weaken in quality enough to change behavior. And that change is already measurable. When fewer people can reliably pay rent, landlords feel pressure. And when fewer people qualify for mortgages, demand falls. And when fewer buyers compete, pricing power shifts. And that is the mechanism. That is not a prediction. It is how labor markets and housing markets have always interacted together. The next data points to watch are straightforward. Future labor force survey releases will show whether unemployment continues to rise, stabilize, or reverse. Job quality, full-time versus part-time, will matter as much as headline job counts. Policy decisions that affect borrowing costs will determine how much of this labor market pressure translate into housing behavior. But until then, the takeaway is simple. Rising unemployment reduces competition, increases financial stress at the margins, and shifts negotiating power, especially in highly leveraged, high-priced markets like Vancouver. Understanding that sequence allows people to act deliberately instead of emotionally. And if you're needing help with that, make sure you book that discovery call with any of your buying and selling needs. You can scan the QR code in the banner. The link is also in the description for my home buyer and home seller blueprints. Thanks again. See you on the next one.